Hello everyone. I don't know how many of you caught my ranking all 59 species of mole video, but today I'm going to be walking through the highlights of the fake moles because actually I got two different comments on my first video. One of them was, this was pretty interesting, but I really prefer the fake moles, and the other one was like, thank goodness you didn't include the fake moles. So I'm making a separate video, not for all the fake moles, but I'll get into that in a little bit. We're going to be talking about the top 17 moles that aren't actually moles. And in terms of criteria for what made the list, again, not all of the animals that fit this criteria made the list, but I didn't include any that didn't fit these criteria. It has to be somewhat like fusiform in shape, which means that like the way moles are, like they have these tucked in little limbs and they're kind of almost like a cone, very optimized for digging through various substrates. They have to be fossorial, meaning that they live underground. They have to have mole somewhere in the name. They have to be named mole. They have to have diminished or no eyes. They just have to kind of look so that the average person would see one and be like, oh look, it's a mole. Some of these I would probably think are a mole if I saw them out and about. Unlike the last video, I'm not going to discuss every single fake mole. There's a lot of golden moles, and a lot of them look very similar. So I'm just going to try to keep things a little more or less repetitive. I don't own any of these images, please don't report me. I just really want to show you guys moles. I'm not trying to get rich off of this. I just, some of these, like, there's only like a few pictures you can find of them. And I'm not going to do very well on pronouncing these names, particularly scientific names. I might not even try with the scientific names, I'm warning you now. And also, I'm not, final disclaimer, I'm not like a biologist or anything. I just really like moles, and fake moles kind of. Not as much as real moles, but I feel like focusing on the fake moles highlights the real moles. There's like a lesson in there somewhere. If you don't experience the fake moles, you can't truly appreciate the real moles. So unlike last video, I'm actually going to show you guys my criteria for how I ranked them. We're going to talk about the distance of relation, like taxonomically, how far away from the actual moles are these groups. We're going to talk about their visual moliness. I guess that's just kind of like their convergent evolution, like how much do they look like an actual mole. Their behavioral moliness, how much do they act like an actual mole. Their lore, kind of a interesting category of just like how much depth is there to the information about these guys. Unique abilities is like, what besides acting like moles, what else can they do? Do they have any special traits? Kind of similar to lore, but lore is more like cultural, historical kind of stuff. And then we have arbitrary points. Usually I just base it off of cuteness. In my very subjective opinion, the arbitrary points are just like, there are some that really deserve to be higher up, but I couldn't find a way to fudge the numbers, so I just created this category of arbitrary points, and then we'll have the total. Alright, so without further ado, we're going to introduce our main players. We have the marsupial moles. They are known for living in Australia. They are marsupials, like many other animals, like kangaroos and opossums and koalas. And unlike moles, so moles actually, they dig with their arms side to side like this little, like, I don't know, frog stroke, breaststroke kind of situation. The marsupial moles, they dig like up and down, so like this, like doggy paddle. And their pouch sits backwards. So they're a marsupial, so they have a pouch, but it's backwards. I think wombats also have this adaptation where their pouch sits backwards, so when they're digging, it doesn't fill up with dirt. Because if you're like a baby marsupial mole, you probably don't want your home to be filled with dirt. They live most of their lives underground. They can support 2 offspring in their pouch at a time, and they're the only marsupials with a cloaca. Another interesting fact that I actually forgot to put on here is that because they live in areas with really sandy, like dry soil, so when they're digging, they don't actually build tunnels, because they can't build tunnels because there's just not enough structure to the dirt. So they just swim through the dirt, or swim through the sand, and they create this little like pocket, but then when they leave it, it just collapses behind them. So they're not actually leaving behind tunnels. They're basically just like, we have the golden moles. These are part of the group Aphotheria, so they're most closely related to tenrecs and otter shrews, but they are more closely related to the elephants than they are to actual moles. And like the marsupial mole, they dig up or a baby marsupial mole in a pouch that is not full of dirt. The mole shrews are actually two separate, not super closely related taxa that I've just lumped together for my convenience. They're not like one group or one clade or anything. There's the African mole shrews of Cerdisorex and the Asian mole shrews of Anaurosorex. They're shrews, so that actually places them in the same order as moles, so they are the most closely related of all the fake moles. Last but not least, we have the mole rats, which are currently only found in Africa, but there are fossils that suggest that they have a historic range that includes parts of Asia. Unlike all the other ones we've talked about so far, they don't dig with their legs at all. They dig with their incisors. They dig a little with their legs. They use their incisors to like scrape away and loosen up the substrate in front of them, and then they kick it out back through their burrow with their feet, and they like scoot backwards and like excavate it out. Oddly enough, the number of teeth varies a lot between species, which is pretty unusual. And they eat mainly tubers and roots. They rarely, if ever, go to the surface. They can't see red light, or some of them can. I know if you've ever been to a zoo that has naked mole rats or other types of mole rats, you'll often see them displayed under red light. Even though they have super diminished eyes, they can see white light, but not red light. They have litters of 2 to 5, and they're rodents, which places them pretty distantly related from the moles. They're more closely related to primates than they are to the order that moles belong to, which I can't remember the name of right now. Alright, I just looked it up, and I can't pronounce that. To the hedgehogs, shrews, moles order. So now that we understand the groups that we're dealing with, we're actually going to get into them now. Thank you for your patience. Coming in at the very low number 17, we have the Mount Kenya shrew mole. It is endemic to Mount Kenya, and it lives in high altitude bamboo forests and grasslands. You can see it there. Then we have the giant shrew mole. It's native to the slopes of the Himalayas, and it's not super giant in my opinion, but apparently its skull is giant compared to the skulls of other members of the genus. And it's only semi-fossorial, so it lost a ton of points in terms of behavioral moliness. At number 15, we have the Mechow's mole rat. They live in groups of 2 to 10 individuals. They're caught by humans and eaten as food. So I talked about eating moles in the last video and how it's not really a thing. I later looked it up, and some guy, apparently some like guy made it like his goal to like eat as many animals as possible, and he said that moles are just very nasty. So there's a reason why people don't usually eat moles. But I guess these guys are distantly enough related so that they don't have the same nasty taste. These have been eaten historically. They're very versatile in habitat. They can be found in gardens, parks, pine farms, woodlands, wherever they have moist soil. They really need that moist soil. And I'm just looking at, they got a lot of points for lore because they are eaten, and for unique abilities, for just how many different places they're able to live. The Cape Dune mole rat. This one's really interesting, right? This one doesn't even look like a mole, or barely even mole rats. They have no social behavior. And they also dig with their claws. They don't dig with their teeth. One individual can move 500 kilograms of soil a month. I think these guys are really cool, very distinct from the rest of the mole rats. Again, they're like badgers in mole rat clothing. Coming up next, we have the Cape Golden Mole. They occasionally visit beaches. They are not golden in color, and they are not a mole, so their name, Golden Mole, is doubly deceptive. But they do look very similar to moles. Cryptomus hottentotus. They're more commonly known as the common mole rat, but I really want as many excuses as I can to say the word Hottentot. There's also, oddly enough, there's a Hottentot golden mole, but it just wasn't interesting enough to include in this presentation. They fight with their incisors. They're not the only mole rat that does this, but they're pretty well known for it. And they live in family units of up to 14. They don't look that much like a mole, but they act a lot like a mole because they live underground. They have unique abilities. And they have lore. I'm just looking at why I ranked them like this, and I stand by it. Next we have the Juliana's golden mole, which is smaller than most golden moles, and apparently it has smaller ear bones. It's very common in its range, but its range is very small. So all in all, this is not a very common golden mole, and it's found near rocky ridges, and it doesn't have visual external eyes or eyes at all. So I think that makes it look very cute and very moley in appearance. Next up, we have the Ansell's mole rat. A colony of 10 of these can dig tunnels up to 2.8 kilometers, which, that's farther than I can dig. They are eusocial, so that means they have workers that don't reproduce. So the idea that there's like these, there's this queen, sometimes there's a king, and then all of these workers, and the king and queen are the only ones who reproduce. That's what really defines eusociality as a concept. And it's found in, as far as I'm concerned, it's evolved only like 4 times in ants or wasps in the hymenopterans, and they're less territorial than the other types of mole rats, so they'll even connect their colonies tunnels with other colonies tunnels, which I think is really nice, and that gained them a lot of points for lore. Next up, we have the Taiwanese mole shrew, which is endemic to Taiwan. It was originally thought to be a subspecies of the Chinese mole shrew, but it's not. It's its own thing. And molecularly, it's the most well-studied mole shrew in its genus. Next, we have the Damarlin. It's entirely fossorial, so it's never exposed to sunlight. So it just kind of casually evolved not to need vitamin D anymore, which is really cool. I wish I could do that. I've got to go outside like a peasant. They like to burrow after it rains so that the soil is damper and easy to manipulate, and they chirp, which I think is very cute. I imagine they're just chirping like little birds in the morning. Next, we have the yellow golden mole, which can live in close proximity to humans. You can even sometimes find them in like gardens and cities, and they are near threatened, which is unfortunate, but they're very cute. I like this little, he looks like he's screaming here. He's just like screaming at the heavens. Coming up at number 6, we have the Chinese mole shrew, which is found in China, Vietnam, India, Myanmar, and Thailand. It is a fully fossorial species, and this is where it gets really interesting. And it carries a distinct and new to science orthohantavirus, basically a virus that's completely asymptomatic in mole shrews, but it's potentially fatal in humans. So stay away from these guys. I don't know if that particular... Okay, full disclosure, I don't know, a lot of research hasn't been done on that particular orthohantavirus. There's some more about orthohantavirus. I need to find out how to pronounce that in general. If someone who's watching this is like, that's not true, the orthohantavirus in Chinese mole shrews is completely harmless, please let me know. I hope I'm not sensationalizing this, but I thought it was cool, and I thought that got them a lot of lore and unique abilities points. And next up, we have the northern marsupial mole. When they walk, they drag their bellies, and they leave this little silly squiggly trail you can see here. Apparently, there's a few reports of hunting them for their fur. They're super tiny. They weigh like 1 ounce. I think that's really cute. They got a lot of points for unique abilities just for being marsupials. Marsupials have a lot of unique abilities. And a lot of points for distance of relation, because again, marsupials... There's the marsupials, and then there's the placental mammals. The only way something could gain more points for distance of relation would be if we discovered monotreme moles. That's not going to happen, but if it does, name them after me, please. Coming up next, we have the rough-haired golden mole. They enjoy temperate grasslands. They're endemic to South Africa. This is why they got so many points, right? They are a crossover episode within the fake mole community, within the fake mole fandom, because they sometimes will connect their burrows with mole rat burrows, which I think is just the coolest thing ever. They also sometimes hunt above ground, though, so they lost a ton of points in terms of behavioral moliness. Coming up next, we have the giant golden mole. They can grow up to 9 inches long. They can grow up to 9 inches, which is the largest of the golden moles, but it's still not as large as the real moles, or as large as the Cape Dune mole rat, which is the largest of the fake moles as far as I can tell. It is endangered, and they are solitary. They don't like to associate with other members of their species unless they're hibernating. They hibernate together through the winter in big clumps, so that's pretty cool. Coming in at number 2, we have the southern marsupial mole. When it was first discovered, by European scientists, so discovered. People knew about it for centuries. It was sent back to Europe in a box, and it arrived decomposed. So here's what happened. This explorer guy was out in like the desert, looking for animals, and he finds this weird trail, probably squiggly like the other marsupial mole, and he follows it, and he finds this marsupial mole just like sleeping. We'll get into that later, just like under like a bush. And so he picks it up, and he's like, well, I'm a scientist, so what did scientists do back then? He like dipped it in like kerosene or something, and killed it, and then put it in like an ammunition box and sent it back to Europe. But by the time it arrived, it was decomposed, so there actually wasn't any evidence of a pouch on it anymore because it was so badly decomposed. So they didn't even realize that what they were dealing with was a marsupial mole. So unfortunately, that's a really weird, gross story. We don't know if they drink water. I put an narcoleptic question mark. So when he first found one, it was like sleeping. They do this sometimes. People notice it in captivity. When they're up on the surface, they'll have this like opossum-like thing where they'll just like go unconscious for like a long time. I don't know. They just fall asleep randomly. And yeah, since they're marsupial moles, they don't actually build tunnels. They just kind of swim in their own little pocket. And I think you know what's coming next. Obviously, the #1 fake mole is the Cape mole rat. I like them. Look at them. They're so like punk. They look like skull emojis. They're like or like evil pandas, you know? They've got these like they look absolutely crazy. They can dig these very large burrows up to 130 meters. They peel bulbs before eating them, so they like go and like snatch the bulb from the surface, and then they like hold it in their hands and peel it with their teeth like a little banana. That's very cute. They eat their feces because they don't digest it enough the first time, so they want to get those extra nutrients. They're little drummers. They attract their mates by drumming. So like they've got this like skull face paint and they drum. They're just these little heavy metal poop-eating moles. 70% of them are lefties. They did this study where they just like saw which directions they turned, and they found out that like 70% of them like disproportionately favored turning left to turning right. So I think that that's very cool, and they deserve their point. They deserve their spot at #1 of the fake moles. I know what you're probably thinking. You forgot about the naked mole rat. Don't worry. I also love the naked mole rat. As we mentioned back in the beginning, one of our criteria was that the average person would look at it and think that it's a mole, which it's not the case for the naked mole rat, because they don't look anything like a mole. They look kind of like this hairless walrus thing that they've got going on. So they got a 0 out of 10 for visual moliness. I wrote about them anyway. They're basically ectothermic. Their body temperature is very heavily dependent on the temperature of their environment. They're eusocial, like the other ones. They might not be able to feel pain on their skin, which is really weird. They've got all this wrinkly skin. Helps them move around in their burrows, helps them make sharp turns. And apparently, if it gets pinched, then they're okay with that. They might be immune to cancer. No one has ever documented a case of one having cancer. They have the longest lifespan of any rodent in the world. And one of the largest litter sizes of any mammal at 30. And there you have it. Those are 17 plus 1 bonus, so 18 species of moles that are not actually moles. And I hope that you enjoyed it. Yes, I'll see you soon for another taxonomy deep dive. Probably not about moles, unfortunately, because I'm running out of content there. So maybe we'll figure it out.